You know, I met a man once who told me he'd spent 40 years working at the same company, and when I asked him how things were going, he said, "Jim, I just can't seem to get ahead. The economy's bad, my boss doesn't appreciate me, and I just don't get the breaks other people get." And I looked at him and I thought to myself, here's a man who spent 4 decades blaming everything and everyone except the one person who could actually change his situation, himself. Let me tell you something that changed my life when I finally understood it. Most people spend more time planning their 2-week vacation than they spend planning their life. Think about that for a moment. They'll spend hours researching hotels, comparing prices, mapping out every detail of their trip. But when it comes to their own future, their own potential, their own success, they just kind of hope it all works out. They leave the most important journey of their life to chance, to luck, to circumstances, and then they wonder why they end up wherever the wind blows them. Here's what I've learned after all these years. Life doesn't respond to need. Life responds to deserve. And here's the harsh truth that nobody wants to hear, but everybody needs to understand. Your current results are a perfect reflection of your current philosophy. Not your hopes, not your wishes, not what you think you deserve, but your actual daily philosophy. The way you think, the choices you make, the habits you've developed over time. Everything you are today is a result of everything you've been doing up until this point. Now, that might make you uncomfortable. Good. Being uncomfortable is the first step toward change. See, you can't change the past. That's behind you. What's done is done. But here's the exciting part. You can change the future. You can change it starting right now, today, this very moment. But first, you got to be honest about where you are and how you got here. The truth is, most people are paying the price of neglect rather than the price of discipline. Let me explain what I mean. Neglect is easy. Neglect doesn't require much effort at all. You can neglect your health by eating whatever you want, never exercising, treating your body like it's going to last forever without any maintenance. You can neglect your finances by spending everything you make, never saving, never investing, never learning about money. You can neglect your mind by never reading, never studying, never growing beyond what you learned in school 20 or 30 years ago. Neglect is simple, it's comfortable, and it's killing your potential. But here's what they don't tell you about neglect. It has a price too. And that price comes due later, with interest. The price of neglect is a life of regret, a life of I wish I would have, a life of watching other people succeed while you're stuck wondering what happened to your dreams. The price of discipline, on the other hand, weighs ounces. The price of regret weighs tons. I remember when I started to really understand this principle. I was in my 20s, broke, frustrated, going nowhere fast. And I realized something profound. I realized that I was spending more money maintaining my car than I was investing in my mind. I'd take my car in for regular oil changes, I'd make sure the tires were good, I'd keep it clean and running smoothly. But my mind, my own personal development, I was giving that nothing. Zero investment. And then I had the audacity to wonder why my life wasn't going anywhere. See, your mind is like a garden. If you plant good seeds and you water them and you tend to them every single day, you're going to get a harvest of good things. But if you neglect that garden, if you just let it sit there and hope for the best, you know what's going to grow? Weeds. Lots and lots of weeds. And those weeds will choke out any good thing that tries to grow there. Negative thinking, self-doubt, excuses, blame, and doubt. Those are the weeds that grow in a neglected mind. Let me tell you about the cost of drift. Drift is when you're not really going anywhere on purpose. You're just kind of floating along, letting life happen to you instead of making life happen for you. And the scary thing about drift is that it's subtle. You don't wake up one day and suddenly your life is off track. No, it happens slowly, one small compromise at a time, one little excuse here, one rationalization there. You skip working out just this once because you're tired. You don't read that book because you want to watch television instead. You don't save money this month because there's something you really want to buy. And each one of these decisions by itself doesn't seem like a big deal. But here's what I've learned. The things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. And that's the key to both success and failure right there. The things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. You know the most dangerous word in personal development? Someday. Someday I'll start eating better. Someday I'll start saving money. Someday I'll read those books. Someday I'll work on my skills. Someday I'll spend more time with my family. Someday I'll start my business. Someday I'll chase my dreams. Let me tell you what someday really means. Never. Someday is the graveyard where dreams go to die. Here's an exercise I want you to do right now. I want you to think about your current habits. Not the habits you wish you had, not the habits you're going to start next Monday, but your actual current habits. What do you do every day? How do you spend your time? What do you eat? How much do you read? How much television do you watch? Who do you spend your time with? How do you handle money? Now, project those habits forward. If you keep doing exactly what you're doing right now, where are you going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? And be brutally honest with yourself. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't make excuses. Just look at the trajectory you're on and ask yourself, is this taking me where I want to go? For most people, the answer is no. And that's a hard thing to face. But you know what's even harder? Waking up at 65 years old and realizing that you wasted your potential. That you had gifts, talents, abilities that you never developed because you were too comfortable, too lazy, too afraid, or too distracted. I call it comfortable poverty. And I'm not just talking about financial poverty, though that's part of it. I'm talking about poverty of ambition, poverty of effort, poverty of growth. It's when you settle for less than you're capable of. Because what you have right now isn't terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. You can survive on it. You can get by. And so you stop pushing, you stop growing, you stop trying to become more than you are. But here's what I want you to understand. You weren't put on this earth to just get by. You weren't given talents and abilities and potential just to waste them. You're capable of so much more than you're currently doing. The question is, are you willing to pay the price to develop that potential? Are you willing to be uncomfortable for a while? Are you willing to invest in yourself? Because that's what this is all about. It's about making the decision that you're worth investing in, that your future is worth fighting for, that your potential is worth developing. And once you make that decision, really make it, everything changes. But you've got to start by being honest about where you are right now and accepting responsibility for it. Nobody else is responsible for where you are. Not your parents, not your teachers, not your boss, not the government, not the economy. You. Your life is your responsibility. And that's actually good news, because if you're responsible for where you are, that means you have the power to change it. You're not a victim. You're not helpless. You're not stuck. You're just at a crossroads, and you get to decide which direction you're going to go from here. So what's it going to be? Are you going to keep drifting, hoping things will magically get better? Or are you going to take control, invest in yourself, and create the future you actually want? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. And the time to make that choice is right now. Now, let me tell you about a conversation that changed the way I thought about everything. I was giving a seminar years ago, and a young man came up to me during the break. He looked frustrated, tired, like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He said, "Jim, I need to make more money. I've got bills to pay, a family to support, and I'm working as hard as I can, but I'm just not getting ahead. What should I do?" And I looked at him and I said something that surprised him. I said, "Work harder on yourself than you do on your job." He just stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. So I explained it to him. I said, "See, if you work hard on your job, you can make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune." Here's the fundamental truth that most people never learn. You can't earn more than you learn. Your income will rarely exceed your personal development. Why? Because you're not being paid for your time. You're being paid for the value you bring to the marketplace. And if you want to increase your value, you've got to invest in yourself. You've got to become more knowledgeable, more skilled, more disciplined, more valuable. Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. Let me say that again because it's so important. Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. Now, I'm not against formal education. I think it's valuable, it's important, it gives you a foundation. But what you learned in school 10, 20, 30 years ago isn't enough to take you where you want to go. The world has changed. Industries have changed. Technology has changed. And if you haven't changed with it, if you haven't kept learning and growing, you're falling behind. You know what I love about personal development? You don't have to change everything. You just have to change yourself. You don't have to change the economy. You don't have to change your circumstances. You don't have to change other people. You just have to change you. And when you change, everything changes for you. That's the miracle of it. When you get better, life gets better. Not because life changes, but because you've changed. See, you're not just a human being, you're a human becoming. You're constantly in the process of becoming something. The question is, what are you becoming? Are you becoming more capable, more skilled, more valuable? Or are you becoming more bitter, more stuck, more resigned to mediocrity? Every single day, you're moving in one direction or the other. There's no standing still. You're either growing or you're dying. So let's talk about the three areas where you need to invest in yourself. First, and most important, is your mind. Your mind is your most valuable asset. It's where everything starts. Every achievement, every success, every bit of wealth you'll ever accumulate starts with a thought in your mind. So why wouldn't you invest heavily in making your mind as sharp, as knowledgeable, as wise as possible? I read books that made me wealthy, not just books that made me smart. There's a difference. I wasn't reading just to collect information. I was reading to transform my thinking, to learn from people who had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, to develop a philosophy that would serve me instead of sabotage me. Let me tell you a story that shows you how serious I am about this. When I was in my 20s, barely scraping by, I heard about a seminar that cost $1,000. Now, at that time, I only had $1,200 to my name. That $1,000 seminar would take almost everything I had. My friends thought I was crazy. They said, "Jim, you can't afford that. You need that money for rent, for food, for bills." But I went anyway. You know why? Because I couldn't afford not to go. I understood something they didn't. I understood that the information, the insights, the connections I would make at that seminar were worth far more than the money I was spending. I was investing in my future self. I was buying knowledge that could potentially change my entire life. And you know what? It did. That one seminar, that one investment in myself, opened doors I didn't even know existed. The second area you need to invest in is your skills. You've got to become more valuable in the marketplace. Whatever you do for a living, you need to become exceptional at it. Not just good, not just adequate, but exceptional. And then you need to add more skills. Learn to communicate better. Learn to sell. Learn to lead. Learn to manage money. Learn to manage your time. Every new skill you acquire makes you more valuable, more irreplaceable, more worthy of higher compensation. They think, well, I already know how to do my job. I've been doing it for years. But knowing how to do something and being exceptional at it are two completely different things. And in today's world, average doesn't cut it anymore. Average is broke. Average is struggling. You've got to be better than average, and that requires constant improvement, constant learning, constant investment in developing your abilities. But here's the third area that people often overlook, and it might be the most important of all, your emotional capacity. I call it the emotional bank account. See, success isn't just about what you know or what you can do. It's about what you can handle. Can you handle frustration? Can you handle disappointment? Can you handle rejection? Can you handle failure? Can you handle criticism? Can you handle setbacks? Because let me tell you, on the road to any worthwhile achievement, you're going to face all of those things. And if you haven't invested in developing emotional strength, if you haven't built up your resilience, your persistence, your ability to keep going when things get tough, you're going to quit at the first sign of trouble. You're going to give up when you're maybe just inches away from success. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. Someone starts working on their goals and everything's exciting and new for a while, but then they hit an obstacle. Things don't go as planned. They face some rejection, some failure, some disappointment. And instead of seeing it as part of the process, instead of using it as a learning experience, they take it personally. They let it defeat them. They quit. But the people who make it, the people who achieve their goals and build the life they want, they've invested in developing emotional strength. They've learned that failure is just feedback. Rejection is just redirection. Disappointment is just part of the journey. They don't let circumstances control their emotions. They stay steady. They stay focused. They keep moving forward. And let's not forget about your health. You can work hard, you can make money, you can achieve all your goals, but if you've lost your health, what have you really gained? You can't enjoy wealth if you don't have health. So you've got to invest in taking care of your body. Eat better, exercise, get enough sleep. Treat your body like it's valuable, because it is. It's the only one you get. Here's the key principle that ties all of this together. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. If you work on your job, you make a living. If you work on yourself, you make a fortune. Most people have it backwards. They spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day working on their job and 0 time working on themselves. And then they wonder why their life doesn't change. But what if you flipped that? What if you spent just 1 or 2 hours a day working on yourself? Reading, studying, learning new skills, taking care of your health, developing your emotional strength? What would happen to your value in the marketplace? What would happen to your income? What would happen to your life? I'll tell you what would happen. Everything would change. Not overnight, but steadily, surely, inevitably. You'd become a different person, more capable, more valuable, more confident, more successful. And the beautiful thing is, once you become that person, nobody can take it away from you. They can take your money, they can take your job, they can take your possessions, but they can't take who you've become. That's yours forever. All right, so now you understand why you need to invest in yourself. But understanding isn't enough. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. So let's talk about how to actually do this. Let's talk about the practical steps you can take starting today to transform your life through personal development. First thing, set aside 1 hour a day for your personal growth. Just 1 hour. That's it. Now, I can hear some of you already making excuses. Jim, I don't have an hour. I'm too busy. I've got work. I've got family. I've got responsibilities. Let me tell you something. You've got time for what you make time for. You've got an hour a day to watch television, don't you? You've got an hour to scroll through social media, to gossip with friends, to do things that aren't moving your life forward. So don't tell me you don't have time. You have time. The question is, what are you doing with it? Let me break down the math for you, because numbers don't lie. 1 hour a day is 7 hours a week. 7 hours a week is 30 hours a month. 30 hours a month is 365 hours a year. That's the equivalent of 9 40-hour work weeks spent on your personal development. Can you see what would happen if you invested 9 full weeks every year into becoming better, smarter, more skilled, more valuable? Your life would be unrecognizable in 5 years, completely transformed. But here's what most people do. They don't invest that hour, they waste it. And then they wonder why their life stays the same year after year after year. They're older, but they're not better. Time passed, but they didn't grow. And that's the real tragedy. Not that life is short, but that we waste so much of it. So here's what I want you to do with that hour. Become a student again. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how much education you've had. I don't care what your job title is. Become a student. Start learning like your life depends on it, because it does. Your future depends on what you learn today. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't need a lot of money to do this. You know what the greatest bargain in America is? A library card. Think about that. For free, or for just a few dollars a year, you have access to thousands of books written by the smartest, most successful people in history. They've put their wisdom, their experience, their knowledge into those books, and you can have it all for the price of a library card. That's unlimited wealth for such a small investment. I used to tell people, miss a meal, but don't miss reading. Now, I'm not saying starve yourself, but I am saying that feeding your mind is at least as important as feeding your body. Actually, it's more important, because what you feed your mind today determines what you'll be able to feed your body tomorrow. But you've got to be selective about what you read and who you learn from. Don't just read anything. Read books that will make you better. Read books on personal development, on your industry, on skills you want to acquire. Read biographies of successful people. Learn from people who have what you want. That's crucial. Learn from people who have what you want. You know what amazes me? People take advice from broke people about how to manage money. They take advice from unhappy people about how to live. They take advice from unsuccessful people about how to succeed. That doesn't make any sense. If you want to be wealthy, learn from wealthy people. If you want to be healthy, learn from healthy people. If you want to be successful, learn from successful people. It's that simple. Choose your mentors wisely. They don't have to be people you know personally. They can be authors, speakers, leaders in your field. But make sure they've actually accomplished something. Make sure they have results, not just theories. Make sure they've walked the path you want to walk. Now let's talk about your daily routine. Because success isn't about what you do occasionally. It's about what you do consistently. Let me give you some disciplines that, if you practice them every single day, will absolutely transform your life. Start your morning by feeding your mind before you feed your body. Before you eat breakfast, before you check your phone, before you turn on the news, spend 30 minutes reading something positive, something educational, something that sets your mind right for the day. This is so important. How you start your day determines how you live your day. And how you live your day determines how you live your life. Keep a journal. Write things down. Capture your ideas, your lessons, your insights. When you read something that resonates with you, write it down. When you learn something valuable, write it down. When you have an idea, write it down. Don't trust your memory. Capture it on paper. I've kept journals for decades, and I can tell you, looking back at what I've learned, what I've experienced, what I've discovered, that's priceless. That's a record of your growth, your journey, your development. Here's something I learned a long time ago. All successful people are readers. All unsuccessful people are not. Now, that doesn't mean that just reading a book will make you successful, but show me someone who's successful in any field, and I'll show you someone who reads, who studies, who never stops learning. And show me someone who's struggling, who's stuck, who's not getting ahead, and I'll show you someone who stopped reading, who stopped learning, who thinks they already know everything they need to know. Let's talk about your body for a minute. You've got to treat your body like a temple, not a woodshed. What does that mean? It means you don't just throw any old thing into it. You're careful about what you eat. You exercise regularly. You get enough rest. You take care of yourself because you understand that your body is the vehicle that carries you through life. If you don't maintain it, if you don't take care of it, it's going to break down. And unlike a car, you can't just trade it in for a new one. Start building the discipline muscle. Here's how you do it. Make small promises to yourself and keep them. Say you're going to read for 30 minutes and then do it. Say you're going to exercise 3 times this week and then do it. Say you're going to save a certain amount of money and then do it. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build trust with yourself. You prove to yourself that you're serious, that you're committed, that you can be counted on. And that builds momentum. Speaking of money, let's talk about financial fitness because you can't ignore this area. Here's a simple formula that will change your financial life. Learn to live on 70% of what you make. Not 98%, not 110% like most people do, but 70%. Save 10%, invest 10%, and give away 10%. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Jim, I can't live on 70%. I'm already struggling to make ends meet. But here's what I've found. It's not about how much you make. It's about what you do with what you make. I've seen people making six figures who are broke because they spend everything they make. And I've seen people making modest incomes who are wealthy because they're disciplined with their money. Living on 70% forces you to become disciplined. It forces you to distinguish between needs and wants.